29. That is to say, I will give you crosses and trials, and thus will you become worthy to possess my kingdom. If you desire to sit on his right hand, you must drink the chalice which he has drunk himself. Footnote: Cross-reference Matthew 20:22. End footnote. Ought not Christ to have suffered these things, and so to enter into his glory? Luke 24:26. A mass of thanksgiving followed, and then the audience began. Leo XIII, whose cassock and cape were of white, was seated on a raised chair, and round him were grouped various dignitaries of the Church. According to custom, each visitor knelt in turn and kissed, first the foot and next the hand of the venerable Pontiff, and finally received his blessing. Then two of the noble guards signed to the pilgrim that he must rise and pass on to the adjoining room to make way for those who followed. No one uttered a word, but I was firmly determined to speak, when suddenly the Vicar General of Bayeux, Father Reveroni, who was standing at the Pope's right hand, told us in a loud voice that he absolutely forbade anyone to address the Holy Father. My heart beat fast. I turned to Céline, mutely inquiring what I should do. "Speak!" she said. The next moment I found myself on my knees before the Holy Father. I kissed his foot, and he held out his hand. Then, raising my eyes, which were filled with tears, I said entreatingly: "Holy Father, I have a great favour to ask you." At once he bent towards me till his face almost touched mine, and his piercing black eyes seemed to read my very soul. "Holy Father," I repeated, "in honour of your Jubilee, will you allow me to enter the Carmel when I am 15?" The Vicar General, surprised and displeased, said quickly: "Holy Father, this is a child who desires to become a Carmelite, but the superiors of the Carmel are looking into the matter." "Well, my child," said His Holiness, "do whatever the superiors decide." Clasping my hands and resting them on his knee, I made a final effort. "Holy Father, if only you say yes, everyone else would agree." He looked at me fixedly and said clearly and emphatically: "Well, well, you will enter if it is God's will." I was going to speak again, when the noble guards motioned to me. As I paid little attention they came forward, the Vicar General with them, for I was still kneeling before the Pope with my hands resting on his knee. Just as I was forced to rise, the dear Holy Father gently placed his hand on my lips, then lifted it to bless me, letting his eyes follow me for quite a long time. My Father was much distressed to find me coming from the audience in tears. He had passed out before me, and so did not know anything about my request. The Vicar General had shown him unusual kindness, presenting him to Leo XIII as the father of 2 Carmelites. The Sovereign Pontiff, as a special sign of benevolence, had placed his hand on his head, thus appearing in the name of Christ himself to mark him with a mysterious seal. But now that his father of 4 Carmelites is in heaven, it is no longer the hand of Christ's Vicar which rests on his brow, prophesying his martyrdom. It is the hand of the Spouse of Virgins, of the King of Heaven, and this divine hand will never be taken away from the head which it has blessed. This trial was indeed a heavy one, but I must admit that in spite of my tears I felt a deep inward peace, for I had made every effort in my power to respond to the appeal of my Divine Master. This peace, however, dwelt in the depths of my soul. On the surface all was bitterness, and Jesus was silent. Absent it would seem, for nothing revealed that He was there. On that day too the sun dared not shine, and the beautiful blue sky of Italy, hidden by dark clouds, mingled its tears with mine. All was at an end. My journey had no further charm for me since it had failed in its object. It is true the Holy Father's words, "You will enter if it is God's will," should have consoled me. They were indeed a prophecy. In spite of all these obstacles, what God in His goodness willed, has come to pass. He has not allowed His creatures to do what they will but only what He wills. Some time before this took place I had offered myself to the child Jesus to be His little plaything. I told Him not to treat me like one of those precious toys which children only look at and dare not touch, but to treat me like a little ball of no value, that could be thrown on the ground, kicked about, pierced, left in a corner, or pressed to His heart just as it might please Him. In a word, I wished to amuse the Holy Child and to let Him play with me as He fancied. Here indeed He was answering my prayer. In Rome Jesus pierced His little plaything. He wanted to see what was inside, and when satisfied, He let it drop and went to sleep. What was He doing during His sweet slumber? And what became of the ball thus cast on one side? He dreamed that he was still at play, that he took it up and threw it down, that he rolled it far away, but at last he pressed it to his heart, nor did he allow it again to slip from his tiny hand. Dear Mother, you can imagine the sadness of the little ball lying neglected on the ground. And yet it continued to hope against hope. After our audience my father went to call on Brother Simeon, the founder and director of St. Joseph's College, and there he met Father Reveroni. He reproached him gently for not having helped me in my difficult task, and told the whole story to Brother Simeon. The good old man listened with much interest and even made notes, saying with evident feeling, "This kind of thing is not seen in Italy." The next day we started for Naples and Pompeii. Vesuvius did us the honour of emitting from its crater a thick volume of smoke, accompanied by numerous loud reports. The traces of the devastation of Pompeii are terrifying. They show forth the power of God. He looketh upon the earth, and maketh it tremble. He toucheth the mountains, and they smoke. I should like to have wandered alone among its ruins, meditating on the instability of human things, but such solitude was not to be thought of. At Naples we made an expedition to the monastery of San Martino. It crowns a high hill overlooking the whole city. On the way back the horses took the bit in their teeth, and it is solely to our guardian angels that I attribute our safe return to the splendid hotel. This word splendid is not too strong to describe it. In fact, during the whole journey we stayed only at the most expansive hotels. I had never been surrounded by such luxury, but it is indeed a true saying that riches do not make happiness. I should have been 1,000 times more contented under a thatched roof, with the hope of entering the Carmel, than I was amid marble staircases, gilded ceilings, and silken hangings, with my heart full of sorrow. I realized thoroughly that joy is not found in the things which surround us, but lives only in the soul. One could possess it as well in an obscure prison as in the palace of a king. And so now I am happier at the Carmel, in the midst of trials within and without, than I was in the world where I had everything I wanted, and above all, the joys of a happy home. Although I felt heavy of heart, outwardly I was as usual, for I thought no one had any knowledge of my petition to the Pope. I was mistaken. One day, when the other pilgrims had gone to the refreshment room, and Céline and I were alone, Monseigneur Legoux came to the door of the carriage. He looked at me attentively and smiling said, "Well, how is our little Carmelite?" This showed me that my secret was known to all the pilgrims, and I gathered it, too, from their kindly looks, but happily no one spoke to me on the subject. At Assisi I had a little adventure. While visiting the places sanctified by the virtues of St. Francis and St. Clare, I lost the buckle of my belt in the monastery. It took me some time to find it and put it back in place, and when I reached the door all the carriages had started except one. That belonged to the Vicar General of Bayeux. Should I run after those which were no longer in sight, and so perhaps miss the train, or should I beg for a seat in the carriage of Father Reveroni? I decided that this was the wiser plan. I tried to hide my extreme embarrassment and explain things. He was placed in a difficulty himself, for all the seats were occupied, but one of the party promptly gave me his place and sat by the driver. I felt like a squirrel caught in a snare. I was ill at ease in the midst of these great people, and I had to sit face to face with the most formidable of all. He was exceedingly kind, however, and now and then interrupted his conversation to talk to me about the Carmel, and promised that he would do all in his power to realize my desire of entering at 15. This meeting was like balm to my wounds, though it did not prevent me from suffering. I had now lost all trust in creatures and could only lean on God Himself, and yet my distress did not hinder me from taking a deep interest in the holy places we visited. In Florence we saw the shrine of St. Mary Magdalene at Pazzi, in the choir of the Carmelite Church. All the pilgrims wanted to touch the Saint's tomb with their rosaries, but my hand was the only one small enough to pass through the grating. So I was deputed for this important and lengthy task, and I did it with pride. It was not the first time I had obtained special favours. One day at Santa Croce in Rome we venerated the relics of the True Cross, together with 2 of the thorns and 1 of the sacred nails. I wanted to examine them closely, so I remained behind, and when the monk in charge was going to replace them on the altar, I asked if I might touch the precious treasures. He said I might do so, but was doubtful if I should succeed. However, I put my little finger into one of the openings of the reliquary, and was able to touch the sacred nail once hallowed by the blood of Our Saviour. You see,